welcome back to my last live of the year where I'm talking about kids and cooking. And I got this question today and I thought it was really interesting. So I wanted to really talk a little bit more about this. And it is, what kind of tools do we need when we're cooking with our kids? And I know there's a lot of things out there telling us we need special tools and perfectly child-sized items. But the truth is you can start cooking with some simple things that you probably already have in your house. So the first thing we really like to use when we're cooking are spoons. Just regular, plain old spoons, which you probably have plenty of in your drawer. And would you like to go get a spoon? Show people the spoons we use when we cook? Great.
Wait, the spoons we use?
Mm-hmm.
Are those dairy spoons?
Mm-hmm.
It's also great for hot chocolate.
Okay, thank you. Just spoon to use, because a lot of the things you can do with kids are things like mixing and stirring and things that can be done with just a regular basic teaspoon. The other thing we use a lot of are our hands. We just can use a spoon, yes. We can pinch things, we can cut things, we can touch things, we can peel things, we can crack eggs. So,
like a banana, we can peel.
Yeah, go the other way.
Obviously,
today is a little hectic because kids are home. Okay, so we use a lot of our hands. Now, I get a lot of questions about using this. This is a whisk.
Spatula
Whisk.
Oh.
I am actually not a fan of whisks and kids. My background is as a pastry chef, and so a lot of the things we do with the whisk is used to incorporate air, which means we need to be going pretty quickly with a pretty good flick of the wrist in order to actually make that work. Now, if you have much smaller hands and not such great fine motor skills, it's really actually impossible for you to properly use a whisk. So instead of having a kid use the whisk incorrectly or just have them hold the whisk incorrectly and have them just make these giant shoulder circles, which is all not the correct way to use the whisk. The correct way is to hold it gently and to just kind of use your wrist only. But that's really hard for children. So instead of doing that, I have them use a fork, because a fork can get the same air incorporated, and it doesn't require them to use wrist strength that they don't have. And then the last tool that I'm always getting questions about are knives. What kind of knives should my kids be using? Well, the first thing you're going to want in the knife is obviously for it to be safe. So safe knives, number one. My kids like to use these knives. These are plastic kid-safe knives. You'll see that they have like a bumpy, serrated edge. And this is what they like to use to practice. I have very mixed feelings about these knives. I like them because they are the same proportion as my knife. So that's good. They're getting the sense of the big blade, the long handle, all of that, learning how to balance it. And so what this knife is really good for is practicing holding it, pinching it, and wrapping. It's really perfect for that. What it is not good for is actually learning how to cut. Because this knife is a chef's knife, and as you can see, the blade is smooth. This child's knife has a serrated edge. Now, that makes a big difference when you start cutting things. So I'm just going to show everybody what this is going to look like when we cut. Okay. With the chef's knife, we basically take it and you're just going to do a slice. That's it. It's a pushing forward motion. However, with the kid's knife, you got to do more of this back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, sawing motion. So the real reason I'm not such a huge fan of these knives is that it teaches incorrect knife skills. You're not going to take a knife and go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, because you're never going to get anything cut. And you definitely are not going to be able to get any good control doing that. It's going to take you forever, and it's going to totally ruin your blade. So I like to encourage knives. I know some people also like to use those choppers, which I think is perfectly acceptable if your child is under the age of 3 or 4. Once they get to be 3 or 4 and they really have the ability to hold a knife and to learn the proper knife position, it's so much better to start getting them on the knife instead of having them keep chopping, because we want them to have knife skills. We want them to have the comfort with the knife and to be very familiar with it. We also want them to use proper cutting techniques. And you see a lot of adults who are still sawing away back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, when really it's more about pushing motion. So that's how I feel about tools. Just to recap, I'm a big fan of using whatever you have. I really like to use small forks and spoons, just regular teaspoons, not teaspoons, like teaspoons that you eat with. We don't really like using whisks because the motion to correctly use a whisk is really hard for children, and to have them incorrectly use a whisk is just teaching them bad habits and building bad muscle memory that then when they actually want to start whisking stuff. And like, I was a pastry chef, so I used to like sabayon, just like whisk those eggs together real fast, but it's really just a wrist thing. And if you don't do it correctly, you can really hurt yourself later on. Same thing with the knife. Learning how to properly hold a knife is going to save you a lot of injury later on down the line, but it's also really important to learn how to cut correctly. So these knives are awesome for learning the correct grasp. And when you're cutting soft things, it's okay. My kids do it at home. We do the sawing back and forth motion, but inside I'm just like, ugh, it's not how we cut. Except if you are cutting bread or something else with a serrated knife. So basically the tools we use every day are forks, spoons, these knives, and our hands. And that is all you really need to get started cooking with your kids in the kitchen. Now, the other question I got for this week was, somebody asked me, what do you like to drink when you cook with your kids? And I love that question because I think it really highlights one of the things that is so important about cooking, and that's we need to have fun, but it's also really stressful. So I'm going to reinterpret this question as saying, how do you not lose your mind while you're cooking with your kids so that it's an enjoyable experience for both of you? And the answer is prepare. You prepare yourself. And that's something that I've touched on a little bit last week, is how do we prepare? And it's probably going to come up as we go through these weekly Q&As because it's such a great question. But that means really being minimalist, having only exactly what you need available, having exactly the amount you need available, and really trying to streamline the activities into things that your children can do, meaning you've already done this recipe yourself. You're already familiar with the actions that have to happen. You've already done the actions you don't feel you have either the time, patience, or ability to do with the kids. And you have lots of towels on hand. So once you have all of those things ready, the ingredients, the tools, the practice on your own end, and the towels, then you don't really have anything to worry about. And that is, also a glass of wine. It's not going to hurt, right? But other than that, being prepared is honestly the best way to keep cooking with your kids fun, engaging, and something that you both want to keep doing together. Okay, well, thanks for joining me. This is my last live of the year, but I'm excited to come back after the holidays and answer some more of your questions. Happy cooking!